first of all, a very good morning, afternoon, and evening to everybody who's joined us from different parts of the world. Welcome to the Safety Pool webinar series. We've got webinar number 2 today, which is focused on how do we import some OpenX scenarios and access scenarios via the API with using Safety Pool as part of your scenario-based testing, be it in simulation or be it in any other platform that you might want. So I'm Siddharth Kastagi. It's my pleasure to host you today, and I've got Fadi Alakad and Mohammed Musa together with me today, and we're going to talk about different aspects of Safety Pool to start with, and then move on to a demo of the platform itself. If you move on to the next slide, please. So as I mentioned, I'll briefly hand over to Fadi and Mo to introduce themselves. I'm Siddharth Kastagi, and I will be your host for today. And I'll let Mo, if you would like, do a quick intro, and then I will move on to Fadi. Mo?
Sure. Yes, hello, everyone. Mohammed Musa, I'm founder and CEO of Deepin. We are co-founders of Safety Pool alongside the University of Warwick. And we at Deepin, we've been working on autonomous vehicle related tools and infrastructure, focused on 3 product areas. One is data labeling or data annotation software. Second is multi-sensor calibration. And third is safety validation, which is tightly coupled with Safety Pool. And if you think about all 3 areas, in order to validate the safety of any autonomous system, you need to have good perception, which needs labels. And also for safety, you have to have reliable sensors, which needs calibration, which kind of leads itself nicely into the whole topic of safety validation, which is both offline as well as in real time, or think about virtual validation and simulation, as well as real world testing. So those are the areas of focus that we have for the company, and happy to answer more questions about various aspects later. I'll hand it over to Fadi.
Thanks, Mo. Thanks, Lasa. Welcome, everybody. My name is Fadi. I'm a lead engineer, I'm a software architect in the VNV team, Ms. Lasa's team. I'm responsible for the team activities in terms of the software solutions, and I mainly work on the Safety Pool scenario database in terms of the optimization and development and the features of Safety Pool. Thank you.
Thanks, Mo. Thanks, Fadi. And I'm Siddharth Kastagi, as I mentioned. I lead the verification and validation research at WMG, being a professor here. And if you move on to the next slide, please. Anything that we do at WMG and as part of Safety Pool in collaboration with Deepin would not be possible without the support that we have from our funders in Center for Connected Autonomous Vehicles, which is a department between Department for Transport in the UK and the Department for Business and Trade. And also with the support of the UK's National Type Approval Authority, Vehicle Certification Agency, who've already announced about using Safety Pool as part of the type approval process in the UK. And so we won't be here without their support and all the guidance that we've received, and ensuring that Safety Pool is fit for purpose for the future regulatory work around automated and driving systems in the UK and abroad. Moving on, please. So a bit of housekeeping for all of you. So we would like to keep this webinar fairly interactive. So what we would like to do is not to wait for questions at the end of the session. So please use the Q&A tab at the bottom of the Zoom tab that you might have in front of you to provide any questions that you might have. We'll try and answer them live as part of the Zoom feature. If not, what we'll do is once we finish off with the demo that Fadi does, we'll take them on a bit later and answer them one by one. So please keep the questions coming using this Q&A tab at the bottom of the Zoom platform. Another important thing, the webinar is being recorded and it will be shared as part of the post-webinar instructions. If you might have missed some aspects of today, so please, you can feel free to log into your YouTube account and go through the webinar on YouTube. And we'll also share them via the various social media platforms that are out there. Moving on, please. This is now webinar number 2. So that means that we've already had webinar 1 that was on 27th of February as part of a monthly series. So that in that webinar, we provided an overview of the safety pool features, and that's available right now on YouTube. You can either scan the QR code in front of you right now, or just go to YouTube and search for safety pool webinar, and you should be able to access the webinar from the 27th of February. So as I said previously, we'll also record this webinar, and that will also be live via YouTube's the Safety Pool channel on YouTube. Moving on, please. So that brings us to the agenda for today. A very brief overview and the housekeeping that we've just completed. We'll move on to a bit of a discussion between me and Mo about some of the aspects of safety pool that went into our consideration when we were doing when we were thinking about automated driving system testing, but more so in the context of today's webinar, we're thinking about simulation-based testing. Then we'll move on to a brief demo from Fadi in terms of how we are going to use or incorporating the use of some OpenX standards within the safety pool infrastructure, and also how we are going to use API and how you can use APIs that we provide as part of your test automation process that you might also create internally. And then we'll end up with a brief Q&A for all the questions that you raise. And hopefully we'll have time to cover everything that you've raised. If there are any questions after the webinar that you might think of, please feel free to reach out to us at safetypoolscdb@warwick.ac.uk, and somebody from the team will make sure that you receive a response to the question that you have raised. Okay. So moving on, a brief conversation between Mo and myself. We just wanted to introduce you before we go into the demo itself. Some sort of the context when it came to simulation-based testing and the role of safety pool within that. So maybe Mo, I'll start with a question for you in terms of when we created safety pool back almost three years back now. We were thinking of safety pool as a catalog of scenarios, but we've also ventured a bit more in terms of kind of providing a platform for simulation-based testing and the test automation within that. Could you talk a bit about the context as to how we made that decision and some of the conversations that you're having now where safety pool is being used as part of the various simulation-based testing processes, both in the US, but also internationally? Mo, you're muted.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and in the context of virtual simulation, there is multiple components or multiple levels of simulation validation that customers need to do. And at the most basic level, there is what's called prediction testing, or planning for different scenarios of the behavior of the autonomous stack, and that does not require a lot of fidelity or a very high level of detail. Then you have more advanced physical simulation that requires a lot more details to cover things like the actual physics of the environment. So if you're using a LiDAR, for example, how would the light be reflected from different surfaces with different colors and different absorption rates, depending on the density and the material type and things like that. And then you also have physical sensor simulation. So each sensor in the vehicle, whether it's a radar or a LiDAR, or even the cameras, are also simulated physically. So you would use technologies like ray tracing and things like that to get very high physical fidelity of the performance of each sensor. And then you can go even further down as you start to simulate your hardware and how you simulate the actual processors and GPUs that you have in your system. And then you get into technologies that are provided by companies like Synopsys and Ansys in the process. So there is a whole range of simulation fidelity and different use cases what we were thinking with safety pool is we wanted to stick around the functional safety layer. So assuming that the teams across different domains will have enough expertise and they have access to commercial tools that they need to simulate the different aspects that are not related specifically to the safety of mobility. And when I say mobility, because safety pool is not intended to be just for autonomous driving on roads for just passenger vehicles, but we're looking at other use cases like delivery and trucking, and even down the line with like marine automation, as well as maybe space automation and the like. So the idea kind of coming back to the initial question is we have the list of scenarios in the database, and we wanted to couple that with simulators that the customer teams are using, whether it's on prediction planning or on perception down the line, to help them validate those components that have a material impact on safety. And we do not dictate any particular platform. We try to work with every platform that is out there and be compatible with them. So this is an invite to any simulation platforms. Would love to integrate and talk to you on how you can pull in and push push simulation scenarios into safety pool, as well as export scenarios out of it. And then also we'd love to collaborate on the safety metrics or the KPIs that you're tracking in your software for what is the definition of safety. And we have a very strong opinion within the safety pool team that safety only makes sense in the context of a very specific operational design domain. So a safe operation for a certain vehicle and I'm just going to take two random locations. So the safe operation of a passenger vehicle that is a robotaxi in Shanghai, China, is not going to have the same meaning of a safe operation of a robotaxi, say, in Moscow, Russia. Because one, the rules of the country might be different. Are you driving on the left or on the right? Also, the cultural norms, the expectations of the passengers as well as the population around you may be very different. And then the use case, are you driving in a urban area or a village or a heavily dense intersection? And I think, and I always actually bring this up, does it make sense, for example, to have autonomy in Shibuya intersection in Japan? It's extremely dense area, and you have the use case there. Like, is the economics of that use case, does it make sense? Now, we get into maybe the business case, and I don't want to get there, but it does affect the ODD. If you're thinking about the autonomy, you need to keep in mind kind of the business case of your deployment, because if you're not going to have a profitable operation, then all of the technology will be just have gone to waste. Like, it will not even be useful for research. So to summarize my answer, we are open to working with any simulation platform, and the focus of our simulation strategy has been on the high-level functional safety aspect related to prediction and planning. Obviously, we integrate with other layers. So if you wanted to do perception simulation or use high-definition maps in the process and so on, those are areas that we're happy to discuss in more detail. But at the basic level, what we provide is for the functional safety simulation. And over back to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Mo. Thanks for the robust response on that. I think I'll pick one point, which I think we'll go into details in the demo in the next minute from Padi. Is this the concept of being language agnostic and also simulator agnostic from a safety pool perspective? So while we've made sure that safety pool from a scenario definition perspective is scenario language agnostic, we also would like to very publicly state that we do promote the use and an execution of international standards. And that's one of the reasons why today's webinar is focused around some OpenX standards and their use within the safety pool world. However, we've also worked with lots of our partners who've had some proprietary scenario languages that they use internally. And then we worked with them to make sure that they could still use the scenarios within safety pool to act and still work with their own toolchain and proprietary languages that they have. And we can talk about that in a bit more detail when we go through the demo itself. So without any further ado, what I'd like to do is hand over to Fadi to do a demo of how we're using, say, OpenX, some OpenX scenarios within the safety pool context, and how we can actually use APIs as part of the test automation platform as part of your scenario-based testing approach to automated driving. So over to you, Fadi.
Thank you very much. Going now to share my screen. Okay. Okay, so I think now you can see the my Chrome page now. Okay, cool. I'll talk about two aspects. The first one is how we import scenarios into safety pool using Open Scenario, Open Drive, and how we export scenarios or how we retrieve scenarios to your testing tool chain or the testing infrastructure that you have for the simulation or for the other purposes. So first, you are familiar now with the safety pool based on the first webinar. So here's the public libraries that the scenarios and the libraries that provided to safety pool users. Then the own libraries, which is the private repositories that the users can access, which is just private to the organization and the authenticated members inside this organization. So I've created this webinar library. Then for the import, for adding scenarios, you can create a new scenario by using a new scenario, which we talked about previously. So now we're going to talk about the scenario importer. So the scenario importer first gives you the last result that you have done. So I'm going to start from scratch. We go to the scenario importer. You can browse for files. And here, let's say, so I'm gonna here pick a file, pick a scenario, which has the Open Scenario, Open Drive, and import that. After that, there's a background process to check these files. I'll talk about that in a minute. So this one scenario has been imported. Then we'll go to the scenario. We can see that this scenario has been included to our library. We go to the scenario. So now the scenario is empty now. We can see as a definition. So the main definition of that is the open scenario. So the primary is here, which means that the scenario that originally created from. So because as Dasa mentioned that we support different scenario languages. So here you might have Flex 1889 or SDL or other files. Then you can also add a visualization to your scenario and add the tags. So we have a tag generation process, which will go to the Open Scenario Open Drive that you have uploaded and extract some of the tags, not all the tags, just some of the tags, and group that in different layers, like ODD layers. Let's say now when I generate the tags of this scenario that I have uploaded, when I click save to see that in better view, so I have here the scenery elements, the weather elements, and the dynamic elements of the scenarios, and what the content of the scenario. So this is for an individual scenario. So now I'm gonna delete that and import like a bulk of scenarios, like So here I have uploaded like 10 files for 5 scenarios. Every scenario has an open scenario and the corresponding open drive for that. And then I import the scenarios. Now, the background process here, it goes to the open scenario, open drive, make sure that this scenario, for example, we start from a higher level, like we start check if this XML is valid. Then we check if this XML or the open scenario is valid against the schema that's provided by ASAM. Also, we check the versioning, that is versioning is supported or not. After that, we check if the open scenario has the right open drive, the open drive that belongs to that open scenario. I'll show you an example of this. Let's take this scenario. So as you can see here, for example, from this notepad, that I have this scenario, open scenario, which has a logic file that refers to an open drive. There is an open drive corresponded with this directory of the open scenario. So I'm gonna change that to check how safety pool looks at this. You go to the import and we try to import that again. So now the background process of or the checker, the scenario checker, it says that, okay, I cannot find the open scenario is fine, is valid, but there is the corresponding open drive is not existent, and vice versa. So there are more checking process that we have done, and also I know that ASAM is working on currently working on checker from their side, and also we might implement that soon to our safety pool. So this is for the open scenario and open drive import process. I'll keep the rest of the time. I'll spend the rest of the time on the API because this might take time. But please feel free to ask any question during the demo, and I'll keep an eye on the Q&A as well. Okay, so first, before moving to the extracting scenarios or retrieving scenarios from safety pool to organizations or users testing infrastructure, there is a documentation on the safety pool which talks and explains in details about the API integration. There is also ready examples for you in Python language, as well as in Postman testing environment that you can test the API. Now, so users can interact with safety pool and download scenarios from the GUI, but also if you want to do the process much more in automated process, then you can use the API for doing this. So the simple use case, when the user interacts with safety pool, they want to bring up some of the scenarios that meet their use cases. So the users come with use cases, they go to the safety pool, they search for scenarios, they choose the library and some of the tags based on the use cases. So as I mentioned before, that you can also perform complex operations like including, excluding, or grouping, and or operations to that. Before that, you can create test suites, which are a way that you can group scenarios together and easily add scenarios that return from the search mechanism to the test suite. For example, here I created something called like LKS blocking, which is has some of the some scenarios. So now I'm going to create, for example, LKS test, and I'm going to save the test suite. So now this suite is empty. Then I'm going to go and search for the scenarios. By the way, I'm just choosing one library but you can add many libraries from your private repositories or from the public repository that's available to you. So here the search result comes with 14 scenarios from this library. You might need to go to every scenario and check from the tags or from the visualization if this scenario meets what I am looking for. If yes, then you can add that to test suite. Again, you can see the definition of the scenario in SDL, in Open Scenario, and in Flex 1889, which is like a natural language, like the English language that we speak, that it explains the scenario in that level. If you are not familiar with Open Scenario or not non-technical, you can also download the scenarios as a package or individual files from the files tab. However, for this purpose, I'm gonna select the scenarios that I'm interested in, and I'll add that to my test suite by clicking here. You can also download the scenarios as a zip file, which includes all the scenario packages with that. Then I'm gonna choose like ALKS test that I have created. When I go to the test suite now, I can see that there are 5 scenarios have been added to my test suite. So before the journey is ended, you need to get the key, API key from the safety pool that you need to use as an authentication method to retrieve scenarios. You go to the settings, and here you can see the API access. So the key now is disabled. Then you can enable. You get that. Just here to ensure that this can be done by the admin of the organization, and the admin of organization can pass the API key to the authorized users inside the organization. And when you want to disable that, you just click on disable and re-enable again. You will get different API key. Then I'll copy that. Now, first, I'm gonna use a Postman to test the API, just to show you that in how we retrieve scenarios. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do is you need to obtain a token to access scenarios. Token is a short life tokens, which expires in 1 hour or 60 minutes, and based on that you need to generate a new token. This is just for the security best practices. So then you need to send a post request to obtain this token using this API, safety pool db AI /API create token 2. Then you pass the API key. So here I'm gonna pass the API key that I have copied. Then I send that. So now the status code is okay, which means the connection is successful. I've got the token that I need, and also I got the expiry date. Now I need to pass the token for every request that I need to make against other safety pool endpoints. So first, you have created your test suites, and your test suites include all the scenarios that you want. Then I need to check the test suites list. This will be against the endpoint API /test suites. Then in the authorization tab, you need to pass the token using the period token and send that. Now I can see from the result is fine. The result is okay. I have in my account, in my organization, 3 test suites and 320. This is the ID of the test suite ID, which it's critical here because you need it for every operation when you retrieve scenarios. And I can see that, for example, the first test suite has 1 scenario, and the others have 5 scenarios. Then if I want to go against one test suite, specific test suite, I need to get the ID of that. So for example, here the test suite, I put let's take the one that we have created, which is 205. So if I didn't pass the valid token, then I will get unauthorized response from the Postman. So once I pass the correct one, then I get the test suite scenarios. Now, if I want to retrieve single scenario or I want to go to specific scenario, I need to pick the ID. So here what you can see is the ID of every scenarios that you have put in your pocket in the test suite. Let's go to the scenario details here. So here already I have picked this one, the first scenario, and then I pass the token. And then I can see an open label format that tells you the content of this scenario based on the open label ontology and the tags associated with that. So you can see here the tags. When I presented the scenery and the weather and the dynamic elements, all are tags presented here in the open label. So you can get that and also pass it to your testing infrastructure for any purposes like maybe data mining or any AI process to get knowledge from these tags. You can also get the SDL definition of this and the ontology as well. Now I'm interested in open scenario, open graph, which is most of the use cases that we see. So the same, now I have the scenarios, I have the ID of the scenario, and then the file list to see the files of the scenario. So I can see here the file ID and the scenario name. Also, if there is any visualization, the video that you can see, you might be also only interested on that bit of the integration. So think about it from your end. When you're looking for a specific file, you can search for the file from the extension of the file. Like when we're talking about open scenario, so the standard format or the file extension of the open scenario is XOSC. Now, okay, I'm happy with that, and I need to retrieve this open scenario. Then same way, I'm gonna query against scenarios, scenario ID, the files, and the file ID, not the file name. And here's pass the token, and then I have sent the open scenario. Okay, so this is the first part of the integration. The second one, I'm gonna show you how you can do that in a ready script that we have prepared for you in Python language. So I'm gonna share that. So this is a Python example that available in the knowledge base that you can download it as a sieve. You are not required to do anything. You just download it and run it, and everything will be working. Just to mention here that there are some packages that it's required to run this, and this will be installed in your machine when you first run this script. There's more explanation about that on the knowledge base, so please go and check. Again, same way, when I run the script, oops, again. So now it's checking if all the software needed are installed on your machine. And so now it says everything is okay. And as we have done in Postman, we need the API key. So here they're saying paste your API key. So I will go to safety pool and copy that and paste it. So assume that the API key is not valid, or you want to change that. Then, for example, I'm gonna here remove the app and say, okay, your API key is not valid. Then I'm gonna do the process again, run the script again. But this time with a valid API. How much time do I have, Siddhartha?
You have time. Keep going, please.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Okay. So now I'm gonna paste my API here. Okay. So now it's a prompt that we have here. It tells you what you want to do. so you can get the test suite. So the test suite is the main interaction point with safety pool. You can take a note when you create the test suite. Take the note of the ID, which will be, you can see it from the URL. In our case, it was 205. So it's critical to have that part when you want to integrate the safety pool with your automation system. So here I'm gonna list. Also, you can interact with that using in the keyboard. So I'm gonna here list all the test suites. So I can see there are 3 test suites in my account, my organization: pedestrian crossing at night, ALKS blocking, and ALKS test. So now it says, okay, tell me which test suite you want to retrieve the scenarios from based on the ID. So I'm gonna here type 205, which has 5 scenarios that I will obtain. So here it's retrieving, as you can see, open scenario, open drive, flex. So now 5 scenarios have been successfully retrieved. And also, as the files have been saved in generated scenario files, let's go there. So, okay, I can see here 5 folders. Every the folder name represents the scenario ID. Then in every folder, I can see 4 files here, which is the different definition of the scenario. So first, let's start with the Flex 1889, which is the natural language, for example, of the scenario. It tells you the description of the scenario in very easy way, let's say. Then you have the SDL, which is one of the language developed by us, by WMG. You have the open scenario file, and you have, which refers to the open drive, which is here. So all the scenarios now have been obtained. And so this is one aspect of retrieving the scenarios. Then you can see that in a JSON format, because JSON is the simplest way when you interact with APIs. In the same way, you run the script again, and you paste the API key. And now let's say I need to retrieve the test suite in a JSON format. So this has been generated in generated JSON. So I go here and check. Let's format that. So in the same way, that same response that we've got from Postman, here where you can also get the test suite ID, then create a loop to go inside the scenario ID and retrieve the scenario files for that. You can also retrieve single scenario based on the scenario ID. You can also see the ontologies based on this script. Yeah, for this script, we have created that, but we are happy if you think that you need to see more information or more languages supported for this. So we have created that in Python, but if you want us to do any other SDKs, we are happy to do that. Please use the Q&A and let us know your opinion. I've done now. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Fadi. Thanks a lot for that very robust demonstration. While we wait for questions, so please feel free for people on the call. Please put your questions in the Q&A tab. I've got a question for Mo to start with, and maybe Fadi, you can also chip in on that. One of the issues in this space has been that there's quite a few standards in this space, Mo, and even with all the standards that we have, we still see organizations developing proprietary languages and proprietary tools. How do you see this ecosystem maturing as we go forward? And you are on mute.
Yeah. So it's a little bit as I've kind of been involved with multiple nascent technology rollouts in my career. Whenever you don't have a leading production example, and still people are figuring out how to go about introducing this new technology, it's inevitable that multiple teams will have strong opinions about what they want to do, and will go about their own approach rather than trying to unify and standardize up front. I actually think that's healthy. That's a good sign that people are trying different things. They're optimizing for velocity and experimentation and taking some risk versus, you having unanimous approval and decisions by committee and making everybody and every stakeholder involved happy in the process. That's what standards are for. Standards work when you have a working example in production that is performing very well, and you want to scale that up. So you want to avoid making very expensive mistakes. Now, what we're trying to do with Safety Pool is kind of jump ahead of that and kind of trying to have our cake and eat it too, in a way that we're trying to be very fast and agile in how we evolve, what we're working with, but also pushing the community to work together as soon as possible. So we did that with the export to Open Scenario 1.x, and we also have that for like other XML or JSON based formats, so you can do quick exporters into these other scenario formats. But the SDL, the scenario description language that we have for Warwick, is kind of our best implementation, and we put a lot of thought and effort into that, and we open sourced it, right? So the team at WMG has open sourced that language. So our kind of message to the community is you can use the open source assets that we're providing. We're also collaborating with standards by ASAM and others. And in the meantime, the best way to evolve the whole industry, not just the standard, but just autonomy and related technologies, is by putting them to practice, finding the issues that or communicating the issues that you're finding and making sure that we address them. So please hold us accountable if we're not addressing things, in a timely way or in a way that you expected. And then maybe like I'm answering the question in two ways. It's okay to have multiple standards, but also we need as active stakeholders in this to push this standard to the best way possible so that we are not reactive and we're kind of giving people the value and being useful to them in the process.
Perfect. Thanks, Mo. I think that's very well summed up. That we would like to promote, and we are promoting standards, but we are also cognizant of supporting the different stakeholders. If you got a question, I'll probe it to you, Fadi. And the question comes from Vinal on asking, can safety pool scenarios be used for reinforcement learning? So essentially ML models. So could you elaborate a bit around that? And I'll come back to this question after you.
Yes, of course it can. And also this is one of the internal project that we are currently working on. Safety pool includes lots of scenarios like critical scenarios, rare scenarios, and this kind of model they can learn from that scenarios and to understand the edge cases of that, and based on that they might learn from these scenarios and generate new scenarios for more critical use cases, because you might find a scenario that's critical in one place but not in other place when you operate that in different maybe region or in different scenarios. So yeah, the short answer, yes, it can.
Perfect. Thanks, Fadi. And just to build on top of what Fadi just said, one of the projects that we have right now live with one of our industrial partners, and it's public, so I'll provide you a bit more context to it, is a project called Drive Safe AI. It's a project that WMG is doing together with Wave, which is one of the leading self-driving vehicle technology startup in the UK. And the whole focus of around that project is how do we prove that AI is safe? And one of the aspects of that is to generate scenarios that can be used for reinforcement learning. And some of those scenarios will be available on Safety Pool. There are some nuances to it in terms of the level of parameterization that we are putting into scenarios for reinforcement learning and other AI models. And please feel free to drop a note and we can talk a bit more into detail around this aspect. So please feel free to send a note to safetypool@warwick.ac.uk and we can share a bit more information about the project itself and how Safety Pool is enabling the project, and the scenarios from that project will come on to Safety Pool itself. While we wait for another question, I've got a question, Fadi, that we get posed quite a bit in this space. Is this, what is the biggest challenge when it comes to actually trying to implement the whole API mechanism and trying to integrate with a variety of tool chains that people might have? I've been at various conferences and I have been posed this question by a number of organizations. Could you talk a bit about your experience in this space?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges is that also the same point that Siddhartha and Mo talked about, the some of the simulators they use different standards to run scenarios, even if they use the same standards, but they support certain versions and they don't support other versions. So this is one of the challenges that we can see in terms of the integration. Yeah, this is what I can see.
Perfect. Thank you, Fadi. And I think we don't have any further questions, but there are a couple of things that I would like to share with the group online. So maybe if we, one of the things that always comes up is for people in this space, how do we get access? So maybe if we move on to the slide around registration and getting access. So for people who would like to get access and do not already have access to Safety Pool, so please log on to safetypool.ai, www.safetypool.ai. And if you go on to the Get Involved button at the top right of the website, then you fill up a form and then provide your details, and somebody from our team would actually reach out to you with a link to a form where we would like some details from an organization perspective, from an administrated user perspective. And once you fill that form, you will be receiving an email from the platform itself to get access to Safety Pool. So if you already have access, then it's well all okay. If you don't yet have access and would like to get access, please fill in the form at www.safetypool.ai and we will get back to you with details. Moving on to the next slide, please. And I think that brings us to the end of today's webinar. So please do follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter, formerly X, formerly Twitter, on Safety Pool to get information about our next webinar. So we'll have the next webinar sometime end of April. We'll provide you with the details for that. And also, we'll share with you the recording of this webinar. For those who could not join us live today, they could see that a bit later. Also, if some of you would like to have or have some questions or would like to think about a bit and then reach out to us with questions, please do reach out to us via the email that you see in front of you. That is safetypoolscdb@warwick.ac.uk, and the team will get back to you in earnest. Thanks a lot for joining us today. Have a great weekend. Have a great evening wherever you are, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.